Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. It's the second Friday of lockdown here in Scotland, and we're going to enjoy a couple more drams this evening. I'm sure many of you have seen now that tomorrow we're hosting the world's first virtual whisky festival. So I'm going to do my little plug for that. Tomorrow from 2 o'clock till 5 o'clock, BST, for those of you watching out with the UK, we're going to be joined by 12 brands over a course of 3 hours. Going to be talking about some incredible whiskies, and it's really a chance for you to get into the comments and ask any questions that you want. So that's tomorrow. But tonight, it's Friday night. We're on for another one of our softer side sessions. And tonight I'm going to be joined by Matt Macpherson from the Malt Room in Inverness, Inverness's first whisky bar. We're going to be talking about a few things. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask Matt myself, but as ever, please jump into the comments, ask along, and we'll put your questions to Matt. I'm sure it's going to be a really interesting hour of whisky chat. So we'll bring Matt in a minute. Good evening, Matt.
Hello.
How are you?
Not bad. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. We were just chatting a little bit off air there about how much better your backdrop is to mine, but I think it's only fair that you tell people why you've got such an incredible chair in your house right now.
Well, yeah, the flat doesn't normally look like this. It feels very sophisticated, this chair, but the reality of the situation is that some of you might know that we're building a tasting room above the bar, and we kind of got about 95% of the way there. And obviously, coronavirus has happened. So all the furniture is currently living in my living room. So it's been in boxes for a while, but I thought rather than sitting at the table, I'd try and make it look a bit better. So this chair is not actually staying in the house. It's going to be in the new tasting room. So yeah, I'm sitting beside the fire, which I think is a good idea now, but in a few hours, well, in about an hour's time, I might be absolutely cooked. But
yeah, no kidding. And now you're going to have to, because it's a nice aesthetic, you're going to have to make sure that there's logs on it every so often as well.
Yeah, we'll do that, and I'll just down some water beside the fire. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, I must say, I am very much looking forward to sitting in that chair when the malt room's back open and things. But before that, and before we really get into it, I need to tell you and anyone that's watching right now that when this is all said and done, and I finally get to come back in and have a dram, I'm going to be bringing with me a little trophy, because from what I've seen, you are winning at the lockdown right now. So for those who are watching this, the day after it was announced that the UK was going into lockdown, I was messaging Matt back and forth, trying to get the little thumbnail that we use in the window here. And Matt messaged back to say, "Oh, I'm down at the bar now. I'll give you a call this evening." And I thought, there's nothing out of the ordinary of that. Owner of a bar obviously wants to make sure that everything's switched off and that all the lights are off and that the door is locked and all the whiskey's hidden away and perfect. So we don't know when it's going to be that you next get to go back down there. All made absolute sense to me. And later on in the evening, I'm watching your story on Instagram. And that's when I see that you have taken with you the tenant's tap and a keg from the bar and set it up in your kitchen. Now, if there's anyone in the chat who's not from Scotland and is wondering what Tennent's is Scotland's #1 selling lager. It's lovingly known as Big Juicy. And now we're going to talk a lot about the Malt Room over the next hour or so, and the incredible whiskey collection you've got there. But what some people might not know, and it maybe is a little bit of a secret, is the Malt Room has the best pints in Inverness. And while we're all sitting at home thinking about when we're going to get our next pint of beer, in your kitchen, you've got ice cold pints flowing all night long. So you, my friend, are winning at the lockdown. Well, I'll cheers to that.
Cheers. Do you know what? I actually view myself as being quite considerate in that sense, because if you think about it, what I've actually done is that everyone was trying to get tenants from the shops, and we don't have to do that. So there's a higher chance that you can get a pack of tenants because of what
That
I've
is
done.
selfless, absolutely selfless.
I would say
Yeah.
self. Yeah,
you're a true hero during this tough situation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. But do you know what is the worst thing? And actually, if there's anyone watching who's in the bar trade, the worst thing is we got a bit excited, and within 2 days there was about half a keg left, which is about 40 pints. And myself and John and his girlfriend Naomi, who's staying here just now, we got through that in about 2 days. So if any, so I'm actually not even drinking it right now. I'm actually just on a can of beer. So
Oh no!
my smugness has kind of disappeared.
I must admit, when I first had you on here, I was wondering, that's not a tenant's glass.
Yeah,
that vessel's not getting tens here.
Oh, I should have had a pint of tenants.
Yeah.
But no, if there's any bar people out there who have half kegs looking for a good home, then hit us up.
Yeah. It's nice as well that you're also promoting responsible drinking. So,
yeah, we did do the house, so I mean, it was to the book.
Well, we've already had Adam McMaster in offering to sort you out with a half keg for a price or dram.
For a price. Well, here we go.
Yeah.
Half keg for a price. Cough, dram, cough.
So, before we start going any further, what do you have in your glass right now? What is the first dram you're having tonight?
So, first dram tonight. I'll just pop it here for people to see. So old style. Oh, it's funny when you have to go the wrong way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on a mirror.
Oh. So 1992, which is the year I was born, actually. Single cask tomatin. So old style labeling. I don't know who this was bottled for. I don't know if it was a private cask, or I don't think it was private because there's no sort of name or anything on it. But I think you guys must have done this as a single cask release. So 53.9%, fully aged in Oloroso. Just a big sort of sherry bomb, really delicious. So sort of picked up at auction. We sometimes browse auction sites for some of the weird and wonderful whiskies, and we always kind of look for some tomatins. And 1992 caught my eye, and I've had a few of these before, and great value. But I'm kind of annoyed I've said that now, because now
everyone's watching it.
Terrible stuff. Really wouldn't recommend.
If you have one and you want to sell it, let me know.
If you have one and half keg of tenants, then we can be friends.
Yeah. So you mentioned there the auctions as well. So in terms of buying whiskey in for the bar, was the auction somewhere that you were always going to look at, or did that come in time after you first set the bar up?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it wasn't definitely something I first thought of as a sort of supply chain for the bar. When we opened up, we tried to cover the sort of core range of stuff and have some whiskies that were really made us stand apart as being a specialist whiskey bar. I think pretty much every bar and restaurant in Scotland has whiskey, but what we wanted to do was offer whiskey that was very, very different. But now we're buying stuff at auction because maybe we're a couple of years old now. But to begin with, we weren't fully aware of it. The thing with whiskey as well is you don't want to scare people off. So, for some people, core range stuff is a brilliant introduction. You don't want to be putting people on 53% single casks as their first dram, maybe, So it's definitely something we've progressed with, and it's something my staff kind of get a little bit annoyed with me at, which I'm definitely guilty for, because every month they know I'm on the auctions and there's literally no space on the shelves. I promise every month I'm not going to buy anything, and I'm normally off sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, and boxes normally arrive Tuesday, Wednesday, and I just get messages saying they're not in the till, there's no space for them. I've definitely got an auction addiction, I think, but it is a good place to find the unusual stuff. Definitely is. Stuff like this old tomatin, you wouldn't find that on shelves anymore. And that's what I think, when you become a bit of a whiskey geek, which I'm self-confessed that when you walk into a bar, you really appreciate core ranges, and they serve a great purpose. But what you're looking for is that old dusty bottle that's slightly old, slightly different, and you've never seen or tried before. So that is where auctions definitely come into their own.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just seeing there's a lot of people jumping in the chat, so I'm going to jump in and say hello to some folks. So, Peter, good to see you. David Dillon, Chris is in. Greg's Whiskey Guide. Liv, how are you? Daniel McLean, Mon the Big Juicy says, fantastic.
And Dan is a good regular of ours, and he is an advocate for our juicy. So
yeah. I've almost got the same problem there that you've got with that 1992 tomato, and I don't want to tell people that you've got the best pint in Inverness, because I'll just go in and it'll be a load of people queuing up for a pint of Tennent's.
Yeah.
Graham Yunson has said that you win the backdrop competition. I didn't know that there was one, but I think this could be a theme from now on. Who's got the best backdrop?
You were joking about wearing top hat.
Yeah, I know. We need to start a hat competition as well.
Yeah.
Jerome, Scott Burns-Smith, Chris B, Andy C, Lee Coors, loads of people in the chat. Good to see you all tonight. So yeah, you're right.
Sorry, did Alistair Kirkland say anything? Let's have a wee look. He's a friend of ours from Squash, and I'd just like to say thanks for him, because he put me onto a workout this morning. Did my very first home workout, and holy shit, I am not fit. And I messaged him after and said, "Oh, thanks for that. That was really great."
Yeah.
I was like pouring with sweat. And I said, "That was really intense." And he then comforted me and said, "Oh, that was great. That was the easy one for the over 50s.
Well, he says that if he ever had a cask of Tennent's, he would donate to charity. So you've got some very charitable friends there. Yeah, I think it's quite funny. I've never seen so many people outside exercising as I am at the moment. There's so many people that haven't gone for a run in 10 years, but are now getting out.
Yeah.
We should have talked about this beforehand. Graham has jumped back in asking if we were both lumberjacks in a former life. We should maybe have coordinated a little bit better. I didn't even notice that myself. So yeah, no, you touched on a very interesting point there. That for geeks like ourselves, when you go into a whiskey bar, you do almost want to touch on the things that you wouldn't get elsewhere, And I guess you guys have that in spades, in the sense that a lot of people who are coming to visit the malt rooms have been at the distillery during the day. They've been either at a Tomatin or some of the other distilleries in the area, and they've tried the core range. So maybe they do want to come in and try something that they can't find in the shelves anymore. And I've been at auctions myself a few times, not with as great a level of success as you, but I did pick up this nice old bottle of Tomatin 10, which, as far as I can tell, was bottled in the mid-1990s, so it would have been distilled in the 80s. So I'm going to pour that in the glass tonight and join you with a wee auction bottle to get started with. If I can open it.
Prefer the old branding or the new branding?
I prefer the new branding. I think there's definitely something classy about this, and I do quite like the fact that it's got an image on the box of the distillery, which shows what the distillery looked like 40 years before that. It's got this lovely painting of a quaint little cottage distillery with floor maltings. Don't know if you can see that there. That's not what the distillery looked like in the 1990s when this was bottled. So I'll pour a glass of that tonight.
I think that describes the kind of whiskey geek element. You're kind of showing me a photo and I'm like this to the screen, like, let me have a look.
It's as close as we can get to tasting it right now, virtually. So, Slange. So what was your, before the malt room, I hadn't come across you in Inverness. So what was your background into whiskey? How did you first start getting into whiskey and before them?
So I studied accounting and finance at Aberdeen Uni, but generally just enjoy being in pubs generally. And long story short, how the malt room kind of started. My sister wasn't very well, and I kind of went down to London and bumped into. Well, I stayed with a couple on Airbnb called Alex and Pre, and at the time I'd finished uni, graduated, but didn't really want to carry on doing accounting and finance. The next step in the accounting kind of ladder was to do your chartered exams, which is now 3 years of exams. And I just felt from school all I'd done was exams. So
Yeah.
I was working at Heathmount at the time, had to go to London because my sister wasn't very well, and ended up staying in an Airbnb with a lovely couple called Alex and Pre. And what basically happened is we clicked really well. And Alex kind of stayed up with me one night after I had a day in the hospital and was having a dram, and we kind of both clicked over whiskey. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'd love to open a whiskey bar one day." And he was quite shocked and amazed to hear there wasn't one in Inverness. So from that moment on, they kind of decided that they were going to kind of financially support me with the idea. I raised as much money as we could from our own kind of sources here. And that's really when I really started to get into whiskey. I always liked it, but the thought of owning a bar and opening a bar and being Inverness's first whiskey bar is, in my head, felt under pressure to learn more and more. When I look back on that now, I think it was a good thing. But what I would say now is that you're never going to know it all, and you're always learning from other people, which is the whole fun of whiskey. It's always changing. But yeah, I think that's from that conversation in London, from really saying, well, actually, let's try and make a career in something I actually really enjoy, was really where it all kind of started. I used to drink rum a lot as well. Rum and Coke was my bridge into it, and I used to wake up hungover to hell, and like my teeth would be like all like sticky from the Coke.
Right.
And my friend, I think Adam, actually, I think he's tuned in, he bought me a bottle of Diplomatico for my birthday one year, and that was my first introduction of drinking spirits as spirits rather than horsing in Coke, So
yeah,
from that moment on, that kind of led me into looking at spirits. But yeah, no, from then on, it's been great. The Malt Room's been super supported from you guys from day one, and everyone who sort of tuned in, I'm guessing, sort of been involved in some capacity. So yeah, thanks to, I guess, everyone, you guys, for supporting it, and we're close to this now for good reason. But it'd be great to see everyone back in for a dram when we do reopen.
Absolutely. And I think you made an interesting point there, that when you first start drinking, you don't necessarily drink alcohol at spirit level at 40%. And I think even with whiskey, that's sometimes some of a big ask, and we often get asked, why is this not at 46, or why is it not at cask strength? And the realization is that most people in the world don't even drink whiskey at 40%. There is some mixer involved, and that's across the board. But when you do take that step into higher quality liquids, and then I guess for you, there would have been, coming from the rum side, there's more variety of whiskey available locally than there is rum. So that definitely becomes the next transition from there. And I think you touched on an interesting point. A lot of people will be surprised to learn that until 2017, Inverness never had a dedicated whiskey bar. So there's a couple of hotels in the city that have a good selection of whiskey, but there was no place to go specifically with the purpose of having a high quality whiskey and meeting staff who know about that product and are willing to tell you about it and engage with you about it. So that's quite a fascinating thing, in the sense that Inverness is the capital of the Highlands, which is geographically the biggest whiskey producing region in Scotland, and it never had a whiskey bar. So why did you, I guess you it was more a case of the fact that it didn't have one that was the reason. Yeah. Why in 2017 did you think that actually this is the time that this could work? It's never been a thing before.
Do you know, I worked at the Heathmount was probably where I really learned my kind of trade behind the bar. From pulling pints to, watching the football, people placing bets, to the restaurant. They had a hotel side, like that whole hospitality side was kind of, I learned a lot at the Heathmount. And one thing when interacting with guests in the Heathmount, for those who don't know where that is, it's about maybe a 10-minute walk just from the city centre of town, that they would always ask staff, where in town is there good food, live music, and whiskey. Those are the three questions I got asked day in, day out. And I could always answer for two, but I could never tell them somewhere to go for whiskey. I would always say to them, there's lots and lots of bars down there. I'd say there's some good hotel bars who have good selections, but you're not always guaranteed someone behind the bar who knows what they're talking about. And that is absolutely no fault of those people. I just think in Scotland, we almost take whiskey slightly for granted. It's when you're growing up in Scotland, and when I was growing up, there was always a kind of bottle of 10 or 12-year-old whiskey kicking about in the cupboards, or at New Year or birthdays, it would come out, and that was kind of normal. You'd walk down a supermarket aisle and you'd see a 10-year-old bottle of Glenmorangie or whatever it was. And then when you actually start hearing tourists talking about that, and they say, "Oh, it's amazing! This is 12 years old. It's spent this time in a cask." You hear their passion for it, and you kind of think, "Yeah, you're right. That actually is quite amazing." But it's become so normal for us, and I think that's maybe why there wasn't a whiskey bar here before, is because for us, maybe a lot of us, we just think whiskey is here. We take it for granted, But the trigger for me was hearing how excited and how passionate a lot of people are about it, but there was no sort of avenue for them to go down. There was nowhere for them to go, and that was really the key for us.
Yeah, I was asked earlier this week, behind this festival that we're doing tomorrow, there's been quite a lot of press and things coming out. And one of the questions that was asked was, everything to you, and it wasn't until I was in the industry, so to speak, that I had an interest. I grew up with distilleries on my doorstep, and it's only when you actually get into the industry and you're speaking to people about whiskey that you realise that's actually quite an incredible thing. And people are travelling around the world to see these distilleries and to visit this part of the country. I'm seeing you're going to stoke the fire now as well. As you're doing that, it's perfect timing, because Whiskey and Donuts have just said Matt's doing his best Nick Offerman, Ron Swanson pose by the fire. But you never see Ron Swanson putting the log in.
Question for you.
Go for it.
What's your perfect by the fire dram?
That sort of winter night dram.
Yeah, well, yeah, or isolation beside the fire dram.
Yeah. So there's two things. So that's a good question, because you're often asked what's your favourite. I always love coming home from work, or walking from my dining room to my living room, as the case may be at the moment, and getting a glass of Tomatin 14-year-old with some ice in it, and that's what I've got right now. But I've always said that the Tomatin 18 is my fireside dram. Just that big warming sherry finish to it. Still a very soft, easy drinking whiskey, but one you can relax with, and you're going to want to give it plenty of time just to open up. And whether you're reading a book or watching TV, it's perfect for that. What about you?
Probably something smoky, to be honest.
Right.
I'm a little bit seasonal with whiskies. Definitely in winter, I do find myself jumping across the Isla, Ardbegs, Lagavulins, that sort of thing. But I think cold winter's night, it's got to be smoky for me. But as you say, summertime stuff, Tomatin 14 for me is great. I think we use that a lot in the bar, is people who say they don't like whiskey, or it's too sharp, or it's just so fruity. It's great that you can just put it to anyone, and it's never ever gets a bad reception. Not to just obviously pick Tomatin for the sake of Tomatin, but we generally do go through a lot of it.
That's something I was going to touch on as well, is that whole idea of, I think probably you admit as yourself that one of the big successes of the Malt Room has been the popularity of the North Coast 500 over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Where basically they took the road that we drove for most of our lives and put a brand on it. Now it's a big tourist attraction and things. So you probably get a lot of people coming into the bar who have almost a new interest in whiskey from having seen a distillery or been in Scotland. If people are coming into the bar and asking, almost as a newbie, introduce me to whiskey, what are you showing them then? What do you have, a wide range of things, or do you focus in on a couple of things?
Normally go straight for Dalmore. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. You get a straight face there, though.
Yep.
Do you know what we tend to just ask
I was
people
trying to
what they tend.
process that piece of information there.
Yeah, you sat back there. You didn't quite take it on. So no, we take, if people say they like really sweet things, we'll maybe grab something like Tomatin 14 or something like Nectar Dior and Sauterne, something like that. And
Yeah.
do you know, one thing that we've actually learned is that there isn't a certain whiskey for a beginner. There really isn't. So a lot of people kind of try and introduce people to whiskey on things like maybe Tomatin 12 or Legacy, the more lighter, gentler stuff. But
Yeah.
a lot of people actually associate just that smell of whiskey with, everyone's got a story when they're younger and they drunk too much whiskey. What we found actually is that just grabbing a complete variation of stuff, and often the smoky stuff comes out on top. For people who say they hate whiskey, everyone's tried to feed them the same style of whiskey, which, like, something like a Balvenie 12, where it's super easygoing, super smooth, but actually they've been given that time and time again, and they just don't like that flavor. So we ask just people what they generally. So we say, do you like smoked fish? Do you like smoked meats? Do you like, smoked cheese? If they say yes, 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 then you say, well, have you had smoky whiskey? And they say, oh, no, that's for real connoisseurs and stuff. It's not always, it just totally depends on what you like personally. So I don't think there is like a specific whiskey that is a good intro whiskey. I think it's very much just grab bottles, see what people like, and go with your nose as well. If you like the smell of something, chances are you're going to like the taste of it.
Yeah, I think as well, and Amanda Kirby in the chat there has just said the flights were a great way to try out a lot of different options as a beginner. I think that's a good point worth mentioning as well, that sometimes if you offer a flight of whiskies and they're all different, so if you have a bourbon cask, a sherry cask, and a peated whiskey, the fact that they're so different and there's so many flavors is enough of an interest to keep people going back until they find the one that they like, rather than going, here's 3 really light, easy drinking whiskies.
Yeah, exactly.
And
the thing with a flight as well is it's really good is that a lot of people, including myself before the bar was a thing, was that you'd maybe buy a bottle of something and you'd work your way through that. And then you try something else next time, and then, the next day or the next day, you try something else. And it's quite difficult to compare a bottle you bought maybe 2 weeks ago to one you're trying now.
right.
Try to think what is the difference there. Whereas the good thing about the flights is that you try them within the space of 10, 15 minutes, and you can really start to figure out what you actually enjoy. So yeah, for people who are new to whiskey, we tend to always push them towards a flight rather than one dram, just so they can see. It's like anything. It's like wine as well. Like, I love wine, but like I couldn't tell you much about wine. But when you try them side by side, you do learn a lot more than just picking a random bottle of supermarket and thinking, is that one all right? Or I think we've lost Scott.
I think I'm back in. Yeah, I thought I'd lost you. I don't know. So for anyone watching, if there is any little outages, obviously everybody has started going online these days, so there's a lot more traffic on the software that we're using and on YouTube and things. So if there's any dropouts, bear with us. We'll be back in, and whoever's on the screen can keep talking and tell you a little bit about the whiskey they've got in front of them. I've already texted my wife asking her to come off the internet just to make sure that that'll stop happening. But there's a couple of questions coming that I'll get to. So Greg from Greg's Whiskey Guide asked a question to me. As Tomatin is owned by a Japanese group, unless I missed something, is it reasonable to think that someday we could see a Mizunara finish of a Tomatin expression? We are owned by a Japanese company. We have been since the 1980s. Since 1985, we've been owned by Takara Shutso. And we've got no plans at the moment to look at Mizunara. We've spoken to coopers about it. We've spoken to cooperages about it. And the simple fact is that for the flavour that it imparts, it's in a very, very expensive cask. You know, if you look at a bourbon barrel, we can get a very good bourbon barrel for around about £100. A Mizunara cask, the cheapest end, you're looking at the best part of £2,000. And it is literally the case that they will go into the forests in Japan and hold an auction beside a tree for that tree. And you're competing, the cooperages are competing against furniture makers, instrument makers, and they only release a small amount of these trees every year. And having looked at some of the analysis that have been done by cooperages, you really need to wait for the longer maturations for it to have any difference to other types of oak and to really impart that. So you're looking at the better part of 15, 20 years. So the finishes with Mizunara oak casks are probably something that we'd probably need a little bit more convincing that it's going to have a real impact before we'd cough up that amount of money, when there's so many other good varieties of oak that people aren't looking into. I think the popularity of Japanese whiskey has seen that Japanese oak has become equally interesting. We did use Japanese shochu casks last year, though, so they're very interesting stuff. So, and then there was another one came in from Julie Bale asking Matt about the Tomatin flight that they had in the Malt Room. Do you remember that? I'm sure you pour many flights.
Yeah, so Julie, cut off there. Hello. So Julie and Andrew are actually our neighbours here at Alton Ski House. So
okay.
I think they're down south, so I hope they're keeping well. So the Tomatin flight they had, I can't remember exactly what Tomatin flight, unless it was, I think they might maybe comment, but I think they maybe did the decades that you guys left. So I remember you came in and did a decades flight, and there was some left over. So I think they might have gone through that with Julie and Andrew, which is basically your guys' new release, Tomatin Decades 2, which is whiskey from the last 5 decades. And Scott came in and did a great tasting and talked us through the basically makeup of it. And we tried each whiskey and then tried the final product. So yeah, that's a cracking release. And that was, a very, very special tasting. So I think that might be what she's referring to. I hope so, because I'm a neighbour and I should remember that. And if it's not, I think I'll be in trouble.
That would make sense. That would make sense. And Phillips popped in as well, saying that the decades tasting was exceptional. That was a really fun night. That was very much the low key sort of launch of this product that myself and Scott Fraser talked about a couple of weeks ago on one of these softer side sessions. So if you're wondering what we're talking about, jump into that and you can have a listen to us talking about those whiskies. But yeah, that was a really interesting night, and I'm looking forward to when you guys have the tasting room ready and we can come in and do other events in there as well. So 2017, you decide to open the bar. How does that go from, and there's an incredible time-lapse video on your Facebook page of the dream to the dram, and there's even parts of it where you can see you painting rafters on the roof and stuff. I didn't even realize that there was windows behind the bar before you framed it all out. How did the whole process of this idea in a Airbnb in London go to being this incredible hidden gem in Inverness, and how long did that take, and how did you go about finding the premises and things?
Yeah, so from the idea stage, it probably took about I think we carried there. I think so. Yeah, the process took well over a year. We were looking at kind of first of all locations and try to figure out how much money we had and how much it would cost to do all this. And a lot of this was obviously very, very new to us, but we really roped in sort of everyone from family, friends, and guys enough for helping out. But the location was a bit of a, let's get on here. Let's see. Sorry, I think I've... Are we still live, troops? I hope so. Let's see. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
still live. It's difficult to know
on my screen, so I wonder.
through the app who's going wrong. I'm seeing you're a little bit jumpy on your side. If anyone's watching it and can tell us if you've seen me or Matt going out, what side's it on, and we can try and fix the web out on that. Are you with us, Matt?
I think Scott kind of cut off there, but basically, yeah, I'll just chat through sort of the build of the malt room. And
oh, it looks like Matt has dropped out of the stream. Like I say, the software is getting a bit of a beating at the moment from the upgrade in traffic. I'm going to send Matt another invite to this, so if you all bear with me, hopefully he'll get that. And while we're waiting for him, I can talk you through the whiskey that I'm drinking right now. It looks like he's back already.
How's it going? Perfect. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on there.
No, everyone now is jumping in, going, Matt is gone, Matt is jumping. I don't know if there's maybe someone else in the house who's online at all or not, but we'll keep going from now, and hopefully that goes well.
I've just switched internet, so hopefully that should be. It seems a bit smoother already. So
a lot smoother, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so the whole process was, it was a steep learning curve in terms of just everything, really. In terms of building something, I mean, I've always worked in bars, but I've never constructed one. And we had the help of the guys at Aspen, who are also building our tasting room and have helped us a lot with Perk. And Duncan and Rudy there did a really good job, along with my sister, who designed the whole kind of bar along with myself. I always say to people that behind the bar was kind of my territory, and everything that looks good and nice is kind of what she's done.
Right.
So we get complimented on the bar almost weekly about people saying it's so cozy, it's so great, and I honestly can't take any kind of praise for that at all. That was 100% all Karen. And anytime she actually comes up and sees the bar, it's almost like when your mum tells you to tidy your room and you don't do it, and she comes in and always notices something, is kind of what happens. And she's coming up from London, she's stuck there just now, but anytime she does come up, she just walks in and doesn't say anything, and she'll just move a lampshade slightly.
Right.
I'm like, well, that's her saying it wasn't quite right.
Yeah. That is so passive aggressive, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. So I don't know if she might be. I'm not sure. But so the design wise was her. The build was Aspen, who were great. And it's one of those things that people always say it takes longer than you think. It definitely does. And it's not through anyone's fault. It's just things happen. When you start, it's a really, really old building as well. It's one of the oldest buildings in Inverness. So
really,
Macpherson, who had the outdoor shop before, obviously it was just a retail shop, so it really wasn't set up for bar use. So we had to sort of dig channels in through concrete floors. Myself and my dad I don't know who it was, but if I ever find them, I don't know what I do to them, but they glued down these like red tiles, and the amount of adhesive glue they used was beyond a joke. So like we were trying to do as many things as we could to save costs. We call it the monkey's work, and we would just basically graft away and just do the simple jobs. But we get the pros to do the bar front and stuff. And honestly, that floor, myself and my dad grinded it with a grinder about this size, and there was dust everywhere. It took us about 2 weeks, and to rip up a floor and put down a new floor, you wouldn't think it would take 2 weeks. But what actually happened was the concrete floor in the malt room is just what we kind of sanded away, and then we just put a sort of a sealer on top, and it's great because the only thing that's the problem is that Glencairns and the concrete floor don't really get on too well. But apart from that, it's great. It's super easy to clean, and it was a floor for us to start off with. It was less money to spend on a floor, and our kind of golden rule when we set up was that anything the customer interacted with, we wanted to be premium and feel really, really good. So the seat you're sitting on, the glass you're holding, the menu you're holding, the coaster your drinks on, the bathroom, all these things that you physically interact with. We want it to be great. And then we would kind of try and behind the scenes run it as smoothly as we could on a budget. So we didn't have an ice machine to begin with, and we still don't, because
Right.
most people drink whiskey or beer. We only really need it for gin and cocktails. So we just buy in our ice, or now we just borrow from bars around us who help us out, which is great. And things like that. That an ice machine's £2,000-3,000 for a commercial one, and we just didn't have the money to do it. And when we opened up, the middle cabinet was super limited. And when you buy fancy, expensive whiskies, they more often than not come with a super fancy box, which was perfect for us because we just like put the box in the cabinet and put the bottle in front, and that was we had about 20 bottles in that middle cabinet, and for us that was crazy because nowhere in Inverness had a dram at 40-50 pounds before, and we didn't know if it would sell. We didn't know if there was a market for it, but it turns out there is, which is great. And now the middle cabinet is stacked. There's no boxes, and we've kind of got a reputation for having those weird and wonderful whiskies. But it definitely took time to grow that, and to begin with, it was very much, start up with sort of a minimal viable product you can, and constantly try and provide great service. The team we have from day one have been superb. The guys are just, I'm there mainly at weekends now, and the guys who are there throughout the week, like their knowledge is just through the roof. And without those guys, the malt room wouldn't work. So it doesn't matter if I'm there or not. The malt room team, I'd be confident if you walked in with anyone to have great service, and they know everything about every bottle in the back bar. It's really impressive. They're really, really good. So that's kind of the story of kind of from not having a clue with paperwork to now being very confident behind the bar. When we started out, I wasn't confident at all. I was quietly. You've got to have some confidence because you believe in the idea, but it's a big unknown. Whereas the guys are, they're really on it. And as I say, if it wouldn't matter if it was you guys from Tomatin bringing people in from wherever in the world, I'd be happy for the team to sit down and have a dram with them. So it's been quite a journey, but a good one.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things to pull out on that as well. I think for some people, anyone who's watching who hasn't been to the malt rooms, if you hear the words whiskey bar, the thing that might run through your head is a lot of tartan and polished wood and big leather Chesterfields, and that's not the malt room at all. The malt room is much more like these incredible, small, cozy Japanese whiskey bars that you see. It's a beautiful, beautiful bar, and even take the whiskey bar out of it, it's probably one of the most beautiful settings to have a drink in Inverness, I would argue, and I'm sure you would agree, Matt. But it's a lovely place to go. And on that as well, I was going to say, just today I was having a flick through some of the older photos of the malt room, and one of the things that did surprise me was how empty the middle cabinet was, like you say.
Yeah.
So I guess the middle cabinet is probably a great measure of the success of the bar as well, right?
Yeah.
The more that's in there, the better the bar's doing.
Exactly that. The idea of top drams, price does not always mean it's a better dram, but for buying old whiskies, sometimes you're looking between £500 and £1,500 for the bottle, and to me that's someone's wages, or it's bills, or it's something. And to be able to build up the collection we have in the last couple of years, and as you say, browse auctions and happily spend £300-400 on an old bottle of Milburn or Glenvore or something like that, and know that when you bring it in, you've got a good enough clientele that will try a few of those drams. Is a great luxury, and it's just such a nice position to be in. And the regulars who support that bar and the whiskey nerds, it just makes our job so much fun because we can just look at a bottle and think, personally, would I be able to buy a £600 bottle of whiskey and sit and drink it in the house? No. However, if we buy it in for the bar and all the regulars, we all share the cost, and obviously we make money on the drams. Of course we do, to pay the staff and whatnot, but to be able to share that expense of these bottles that personally you would never buy on your own, that's what makes it great. That's, as a whiskey nerd, being able to look at a bottle and think, I really want to try that. And I know there's 20 other people here who will want to try that as well. That's what I love.
Yeah, it's a great thing, and it's something you guys do very, very well. I'm curious. So, like you say, when you first started out, you had this small selection in that cabinet, but still quite a lot of bottles of whiskey. I think even when you first opened, there was well over 100 bottles of whiskey.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have, when you were going into this, did you have an idea in your mind of what your menu was going to look like and how you were going to pull that together? You've always been very supportive of the local distilleries, and it makes sense with a lot of tourists coming in as well. But I'm wondering what the thought behind that was.
Yeah. The first thing when we sat down and thought about a whiskey menu, and one thing I think a lot of whiskey menus really kind of let themselves down with is, one, they're not updated regularly enough, which is really hard because we, as I say, we're buying bottles of whiskey every single week, so keeping it updated is hard. But the one thing that I think is really, really intimidating for people who are new to whiskey is that if someone just hands them a menu and doesn't explain anything and just says, here's a list, because the only thing you're going to do at that point is flick through. You're going to skip the first page because you don't want to buy the cheapest dram. You're going to look at the sort of, it's kind of like when you're on a wine list and it's 40 pages long. You don't buy the house wine, you buy one or two up. You think, oh, that'll be all right.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to do that. We want to try and make whiskey as approachable as possible, because it is a big subject and it can be quite daunting to look at a menu, and especially when you're a specialized bar, when people know what they're talking about. We didn't want to have any of that sort of pretentiousness or we know more than you. Like, we wanted to make it very much a learning environment. So we decided to break it up into three sections. So first of all, we had our whiskey flights, which we always put people towards, because you can sit there with tasting notes in your own time. If you're embarrassed to ask about flavors or questions, it's all in front of you. You can take your own time if you want to ask, then great. But as a whiskey list itself, we decided to break it into a modest category, a memorable, and a magnificent category. So, it's not, it doesn't put it directly into prices, but if you're quite new, you might stay in the modest section and say, oh, I'll try and find some whiskies here that are reasonably priced and it's quite a good starting point, memorable to treat myself, or if you're a connoisseur and really want to treat, jump straight to memorable, and just even breaking up like that really helps. Then done by region. So it's just trying to make it as easy as possible and as approachable as possible for people. Because as I say, dumping a huge list in front of someone and saying, "Oh, tell me what you want," really doesn't. It just makes it really daunting. It doesn't help people actually learn anything about whiskey.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you also touched on, it's always been good about the malt room for me going in as a punter has been, I very, very rarely will look at a whiskey menu now. I'll have a scan of the bar, always double check to make sure there's a bottle of Tomatin kicking about somewhere, but then I'll have a look and I'll be thinking, right, what do I want today? What's always been good in the malt room is I can say to whoever's on, what's good at the moment, what's interesting you. And also at the end of the bar, you've got the little, you don't do a malt of the month, but you've got the staff picks of the moment, which is incredible.
Yeah, we do that. We get asked for malt of the month a lot, and the pure reason I don't do it is because I don't want people coming in and just ordering a dram because it's the cheapest. Financially, that doesn't make any sense for us. And also, the malt room is not somewhere just to come for a cheap dram. Like, if you want just the cheapest dram, that's totally fine. Like, there's many days I go out and just want the cheapest dram and get, out the guys who find cheap drams. But we don't really want that kind of attitude in the bar. What we want to do is say, well, you're just ordering that because it's malt of the month. But that's not the whole point. The point is that, as you say, come in, staff picks. All right, Matt, what's your pick? Why is it your pick? Or what's Charlotte's pick? Or what's John's pick? And and that's a much more. It's just more interactive. We don't have TVs, we don't have Wi-Fi. We just want to chat to people about actual whiskey and their enjoyment of it, because I feel that's probably what sets us apart from different bars. Is that, and again, it's no fault of other bars. They just maybe haven't had the training, or it's not their main focus. But our main focus is whiskey. So I want to talk about whiskey. And I want to find you a whiskey you've never had before, and I want to make sure you're actually really enjoying what's in your glass. You've not just picked it because it's the cheapest.
Yeah. Now on that, I'm going to move on to another dram. I don't know if you're going to join me with a second whiskey, but
I'm going to run for it as well, folks. I'll be 2 seconds.
Yeah. So while Matt is away, I'll introduce you to this whiskey. This is another tomatin, but this one was bottled by the Malt Room in June of last year. You can see their lovely logo there. And I'm going to ask Matt to chat through the process of picking a cask and things like that as well. But this whiskey is outstanding. If anyone's tried our 2006 Amontillado finish release that we bottled last year, this is that whiskey from one of those casks, bottled at cask strength. There was only 60 bottles of this for the Malt Room. And I've managed to pick up bottle number 60 of 60, which is a nice thing, but I'm going to get that open tonight. It feels like a fitting time to open it. What is everybody else drinking? Everyone in the chat, what are you having tonight? Scott Jameson, you've got bottle 50 of the Malt Room bottling. Fantastic.
Okie dokie. There we go. Another dram.
Did I just see you opening a wee beer there?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Cheers.
I was just saying there, Matt, that I've now opened the bottle that I've got of your cask. So
the one we charged you full price for.
Yeah. I should make that point as well. So I'm very fortunate that because I work at Tomatin, I get the benefit of Tomatin's staff price list. So since I've worked at Tomatin, I've never paid full price for a bottle of Tomatin until I walked into the Malt Room. And I had a few drinks. And I think it was John that was on the bar as well. And I said, do you have any bottles left of the cask? And he said yes. And I bought one and was charged full ticket price. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, Matt. When we do single cask bottlings, we'll send the cask down to the bottling hall in Edinburgh. They'll bottle the cask, and then the cask will go from there to the market. But because this was local and we weren't doing a whole cask, we were just doing 60 bottles. We bottled it at the distillery.
Yeah.
I hand bottled and labeled every single bottle of this, and I still paid full price for it. So that if that's not a glowing review of how good a whiskey this is, I don't know what else is.
Yeah, I'm never going to live that one down, actually.
No. You're never going to give me a refund either, so you're not getting to live down. So a few people in having a dram. Liam Stevens on the Legacy tonight, fantastic whiskey. Shiv Matthews is on the Kuboken, the Black Owl one. That's the Black Owl beer, and the Muscatel one, fantastic. Hugh McPhail's on a Ben Rinnes. Liv is on Monkey Shoulder, dare I say. Absolutely, it's a fantastic drop of whiskey. Few more people on. John Wells is on Legacy and Cask Strength. I hope not in the same glass. Luna's on Glendronach and Craig Ellery. A lot of great whiskies been enjoyed here tonight. So Adam Scott, as I'm sure Matt has told you, that Amontillado cask bottling stood us in good stead and resulted in some very good stories in Japan. You took some of this to Japan with you, didn't you?
We did, yeah. So it was actually the last bottle I had in the bar, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it, but someone gave me some advice and said that we went over, me and my best friend, sort of Adam, went over to Japan for the rugby. Japan was somewhere I've always wanted to go for the whiskey, and the rugby was a good excuse for a work trip to see Japan. And I thought, do you know what, we'll take something special, and we decided to take the single cask Tomatin. So I ordered lots of those little bottles. So I had 28 bottles. We were there for 31 days. And my goal was to give a bottle of Tomatin to a bartender, a member of staff in a restaurant, or someone who we interacted with every single day, and see how we would get on with it. And on day one, we went into this bar. Well, we'd just been to an octopus and karaoke bar. For those who've never been to Japan, that's quite a normal thing by Japanese standards. And
what did you sing? and will you do a rendition now?
Oh, you know what? I didn't actually sing, but I wish I had actually. That would have been good. But no, we went across the road to this place called Bar Highball, and as soon as we walked in, we knew it was quite a serious kind of kind of Japanese bar. We looked at as soon as you walk in and see the gantry, you kind of know, and it was definitely heavily involved with Suntory. So there was, Hibiki, Harmony, 12, 17, 21, 30, Yamazaki, Hakushu, everything. Bottles you kind of rarely see here now were all available to buy by the dram. But it was a very much Japanese focused bar, and it was our first night, and we were trying to be as polite as possible, but our Japanese was fair. We could say thank you and hello and stuff, but that was about it. So we kind of went to the bar, and the bartenders in Japan are very, very sort of accurate. They're very, like, if they're dealing with you, they're dealing with you. And we kind of went to the bar and got put down this little bit of paper saying, there's I think it was about a £10 charge even to sit at the bar. I think they just didn't want tourists coming in and just disrupting the atmosphere. So we said, oh no, that's fine. Yeah, we'll pay the £10 and sat at the bar. And we seen there was a little chalkboard and had all the Yamazaki prices. And there's Yamazaki 18, which is probably one of my favorite drams of all time. I think it's just phenomenal. But unfortunately now it's just about £500 a bottle. It's crazy. So I said to Adam, have you ever had Yamazaki 18? He said, no, never. I said, well, it's our first night. Let's have a really good dram and toast the trip, So kind of ordered two of those, and the guy came over and he poured us two Yamazaki Distillers editions, which is the kind of their core range Yamazaki.
Yeah.
It's still a lovely dram, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't quite what we were looking for in the moment. And we didn't want to be rude either. Like, we're in their kind of bar, they're very busy dealing with regulars. Like, we don't speak Japanese. We didn't want to kind of be rude, but at the same time, we were like, kind of really want a Yamazaki 18. And so kind of got the guy's attention again and kind of pointing to Yamazaki 18, and he kind of pointed at the price. I think it was about £35 a dram, which by anyone's standards is an expensive dram, but it was kind of for quite a big moment, Yeah. So he poured them both and kind of looked at us and thought, maybe these guys do know what they're talking about, And someone gave me some advice before as well and said, when you're in Japan, you always present a business card. And the way you present a business card is not like what we do here. And, they don't just say, oh, there's your card, call me or whatever that, It's very, very precise. And you have two hands like this, and you kind of bow and you put your card down on the bar top or into their hands, preferably. And so someone, I think it was actually Graham from Tomatin who goes over quite a lot to.
Yeah, that's right.
He gave me that advice, and so we took some Malt Room cards over and this, and out comes Google Translate, and turns out they figured out that we were involved in whiskey in some way. And then I thought, okay, this is night one. This is the perfect place to try and give our first sample away. So I pulled out the sample and said, oh, it's okay with you guys. I know in the bar this is for the staff, and explained it with Google Translate again. And previously we had no bartenders around us. By about 5 minutes time, we had about five. Kind of all huddled around.
Nobody else getting served.
Honestly, they were all just like this, smelling the bottle. They were just so into it. And the bar manager comes over, starts shaking her hands. It was just amazing. As soon as there's a whiskey connection, it's just phenomenal how well you can get on with people. And they were so grateful for the dram, which was really nice, and they really enjoyed it. The guy said, oh, this is my favorite dram. Let me sort of give you a present as well. So he goes into the cabinet and pulls out 30-year-old Hibiki, which on their menu was £350 a dram, and poured 2 drams for me and Adam and said, oh, there you go. So yeah, the Amontillado cask served us very well. So
good.
Yeah, that's why I had to charge you full price, because it's
because you were giving so much of it away to other people. Yeah, well, do you know what? I don't even regret it at all. I'm enjoying it now massively. Yeah. I've been jumping into the 2006 Amontillado release a little bit over the last couple of days, and that's the 46% bottling of it, but at cask strength there's even extra layers. And I've been saying since we released that 2006 that for me, it's the best sherry matured whiskey that we've ever done at Tomatin. But this, if you ever get the chance to try this whiskey, folks, give it a go. It's absolutely stunning. So, how is that for you now? You know, you're 3 years into owning and running your whiskey bar, and now you're getting to select bottles for the bar for yourself, select casks, and some of them are direct, like the ones you've done with us and the ones you've done with Adelphi. Some of them you're part of a bigger group of whiskey bars in Scotland. How's that process for you?
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's one of those things, just that, you know, you never actually think you're going to be in that position where you can say, well, actually, can you send us samples? We might potentially buy this cask and sell it in the bar and whatnot. So it's kind of whiskey at its purest form for me. You know, like fancy bottles, fancy packaging. That's great. But what I love is actually someone just going into a cask, putting in a bottle and saying, try that, try that, try that. You know, and it can be weird and that's where the weird and wonderful things really come out in whiskey, which really excite me. You know, core expressions are fantastic, but they're very crowd pleasing. Whereas sometimes with single cask whiskey, you get something like that Amontillado actually, which is so bizarre and so great, but you can't really explain why. And if you try to replicate it, you probably never could.
Yeah.
And that is what's the really exciting thing about doing single casks. We've been on a Kulila with Adelphi, with Connell. We did our first one with you guys, the Amontillado. Hopefully, be another one coming up soon. But yeah, no, it's definitely, that really excites me. I love that part of
it. Nice. Connell's watching at the moment. He said good evening, and so is Shilton Almeida from Paul John, who was in last year when he did the tasting in town. Both of these guys are going to be in the festival tomorrow, so I hope you're going to be watching that tomorrow. That'll be. I mean, you're not going anywhere, right? So
I'm delivering some donuts tomorrow, and then
all right.
I'll be home after that, and after Adam's dropped off that keg, which he's I think promised to do on here, then I'll be sitting having a beer.
So, speaking of donuts, Whiskey and Donuts have been back on, and I feel like this is a question that they know the answer to already, but they've put it out there to see how it lands.
Go on. Yeah.
So you've got to choose.
Yeah.
One or the other. Cerveza and Motown music, or Whiskey by the Fire?
That's a hard one. It depends if you're on your own or you're in the crowd, I think. Like Cerveza and Motown on your own's a bit weird.
Yeah.
But Whiskey in the Fire by your own's not so weird.
But whiskey by the fire, when there's a group of people standing around, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah. I'm going to go against the grain here and say Cerveza and Motown, I think would be.
Wow.
Yeah. I should. You know, I do love a Whiskey by the Fire, but I know what they're hinting at. We had a good night at. We did a Whiskey and Donuts thing in the Spirit of Speyside Festival last year. And myself, Nicole, and those guys basically had a great night. We stayed in this kind of house and we finished off a couple of tastings with some perk donuts and their kind of whiskies. And yeah, we just had a bit of a blowout, and there was a lot of Motown and beers till silly o'clock in the morning. So yeah,
fantastic.
Good fun.
Yeah. Now, as you say that, what whiskey have you moved on to?
I have gone on to another auction buy. There we go. This way. So this is your 25-year-old batch 2, 1988. So this is actually on our flight Highland Heroes. And I thought, just because there's not much left in the bottle, I thought it'd be irresponsible to put that back on the shelves after lockdown because it might have lost some flavor. So I thought, you know, I'd be the caring and responsible owner that I am and finish it, because I don't want any customers to have a bad experience, you know. Again, selfless again, I think.
I was going to say, this is a common theme now. You're taking kegs of beer home so that you don't have to buy it from the shop. And yeah, no, the 1988 is a wonderful expression. We did a couple of batches of it. Has a slight port influence in it. I think one of the casks used in every batch was a port pipe finish. So lovely, lovely stuff. And that has now evolved into what is the Tomatin 30-year-old, because 1988 obviously now is over 30 years old. So lovely, lovely stuff. Matt, we've gone over the hour mark there, so I guess what I'll ask, just as a closing thing, I know some people are going into other live streams. What is the future for the Malt Room and for the company? Where do you plan taking things?
So we have our tasting room, which is the next sort of step for us. So this whole coronavirus thing, which is a disaster all around, but in terms of where we're at, we were sort of in the process of building our upstairs, and we still are there. We're kind of 90% there, so it's not quite finished, but hopefully when we reopen, it won't be too far away. And yeah, we just like to do a tasting room. We love the bar interaction that we were talking about tonight, but we also get quite a lot of requests for kind of private tastings and just like kind of little group settings, like what we're doing with me and you just now. People who want to sit and chat about whiskey, and to have a space where we can do that would be great. So this year, that's kind of our focus. And who knows, maybe in years to come, maybe another Malt Room somewhere. Not sure where, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But actually, I've actually got some questions for you. I haven't told you.
Okay, go for it. I hate that you've come prepared as well.
I have.
Look at me leaning forward, almost as if I can see the questions on the book. Right, go for it.
So we've got some Q&A questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is, what is the strangest thing to happen to you during a tasting?
There's so many. There's so many that I can't talk about on the internet. But what I will go to
questions are along these lines, so I feel
there's a lot more stories that I'll tell you when I jump back into the bar after this is all done. But one that I do always remember was in Munich in Germany. So I think it's February, March every year, they have the Finest Spirits Festival in Munich. And whiskey shows in Germany are a bit of a marathon. It's 8-hour days, they're long days. And people go to the show and they spend the whole day there. And they'll be drinking a couple of cocktails, they'll have some beer, they'll go for a bit of food, they'll have some whiskies. And there's master classes as the day goes on. So the show finishes, I believe it finishes at about 9 o'clock at night. And I arrive at the show and I meet with my distributor and he tells me, your masterclass starts at 8:45. Oh, that only leaves me 15 minutes. He says, no, it's going to be an hour and 15 minutes. These people are paying to stay for an extra hour after the show. So within the industry, we call that the graveyard shift. That is the people that have been at a whiskey festival for 8 hours and have decided that what harm could another hour do. And I go into the room and the crowd's already in, and we had just started the campaign, The Softer Side of the Highlands, and one of the banners that we have is this farmer with a collie, with a poodle and a big hat on. And our distributor, just as I'm going into the room, throws a toy poodle at me and puts a hat on my head and gives me a stick. And I walk into the room with this get-up on. I'm like, I'm as surprised as you guys are. But there's a guy in the front row who's already fallen asleep. I made the comment, wouldn't it be funny? Everyone's got a pipette with water in front of them. I made the comment, wouldn't it be funny if someone squirted him with water? And I've never seen 25 grown German men run so quickly. They all run around this guy and start squirting him with a little bit of water. So in terms of what I can say on air, that's probably the most bizarre thing that's happened in a tasting.
Nice. So good answer. So the next one, who's got the worst fashion taste at Tomatin?
Worst fashion taste? Yeah. Probably me. I've got a love of checkered shirts, so I get called Cotton Eye Joe.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. I get called Cotton Eye Joe by Scott Fraser quite a lot. And then when I'm not wearing a checkered shirt, I'm wearing a waistcoat, so I look like I've just lost at the Masters of snooker. So it's probably me. Yeah, I'll take that hit.
Okay. apart from the malt room tomato and bottling, what is the weirdest thing you've put in your mouth?
I wasn't expecting that at all, and I'm not sure that I've got an answer.
You've been well travelled. I thought I better ask.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. Probably some form of food that I've eaten in Asia at some point. I'm, as you know, I'm very lucky to get to travel the world with this job, and I approach every sort of place that I go with that. Show me what's local. Kazakhstan. Here it is. Kazakhstan. I went to Kazakhstan in 2017, and I was met by our distributor who. This was when I was not at Tomatin, so I can talk about this freely as well. I'm staying in this 20-story tall tower block, and I'm on the top floor, but the windows are made of like cling film, so I didn't get a great night's sleep. I go downstairs, and this guy shows up, and he's got a Ferrari branded flat cap on, and I was like, fantastic, we're going to get in this guy's Ferrari. But it was very much like that scene in Friends where Joey's got all the Porsche gear, because we go outside to a Lada from the 1970s that his mate was driving. Anyway, we go up to this restaurant, and the restaurant's beautiful. It's looking over Almaty, lovely, lovely setting. And this platter of meat arrives. And I said to the guy, I was like, oh, what is this? And he's like, this is horse meat. I was like, oh, okay, fantastic. Now, I'd had horse meat before because there's a small town in Belgium that makes horse meat sausages. So I'm like, oh, fantastic. And it was nice. And I was like, oh, what's this meat? And he's, oh, this is horse meat. So, oh, okay. And this kept going on. And every piece of meat that we had was horse meat. And by the end of it, I was exhausted with this. So back to the hotel. I go to bed, and I wake up the next morning, and I go to breakfast. And sure enough, I get out the elevator to the breakfast room, and it's just a sea of horse meat in front of me again. I was like, oh, no. I managed to find some Cocoa Pops. So like, here we go. This is fantastic. A nice hearty breakfast. I pour the bowl of Cocoa Pops, and I sit down, and I start eating it. I was like, oh, this doesn't taste like the Cocoa Pops we get back at home. And I went and had a look, and sure enough, they were the same. And then I looked at the milk, and it was horse milk. I didn't even know you could milk a horse. So, and that was further exacerbated by the fact that I went to a cocktail bar later that evening and did a presentation and asked them to make me a local drink, and they made me a gin fizz with horse milk in it. But all credit to the guys at Bar Maglot. That was one of the best cocktails I've ever had. Just use the horse milk in a cocktail, not in your Cocoa Pops. That's the advice I'd give to anyone.
Solid advice. Solid. Yeah. Okay. What are some of the nicknames you have for customers or co-workers?
Oh, I don't really have anything. There's nothing really inspiring. It tends to just be like shortened versions of people's names. Okay. That's one thing that I think has been lost over the years. When I speak to my granda, he always tells me the nicknames of people that he grew up with and where they got those names, and they're fantastic. But like there was a guy that I grew up with in the village whose name was Sonny Dick, and I genuinely, until I was 25 years old, thought that this guy's birth name was Sonny Dick, and it wasn't. He was Richard's son.
Oh.
So he had two nicknames. He had a first and last nickname, but we don't really have that anymore. It tends to just be shortened names. I can't even think of anyone off the top of my head that we have a nickname for.
Okay. The last one. If you were held at gunpoint and told if you didn't impress them with your dance moves, you would be killed, what dance move would you bust out?
The Running Man, straight away, no doubt.
I think everyone needs to see it though. That's the problem I think I've got here.
They will see that the next time that I'm in the malt room.
I think let's just have a look at the comments and see how many we can get for for a running man from Scott. This is the last invite to Tomatin event, but
yeah, this is going to be an interesting tasting, like a whiskey and dance move pairing night.
Yeah, let's have a look and see if anyone.
Nobody yet.
No one. No.
Oh, well, thank you guys. That's been a lovely tasting. Connell, you can.
Let us see it.
Connell, I think you've probably seen it many a times in the Netherlands as well. So, next time I'm in the malt room, I will let you
trying to close off here. He's trying to close off. Let's not let it happen, folks.
Give the people what they want.
Running man, yes.
No.
I mean,
well, if Graham Yunson's saying it, he's a director of the company, so
I think you've got to do it.
Can't go wrong. Let's see if I can set this up.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. That is my at gunpoint dance move. That fair turned on its head.
Yeah, I know. I thought I'd keep that one for you.
Yeah. There we go. If you don't see me wearing a Tomatin t-shirt ever again, it's because I've been fired. I do one social media takeover and I end up finishing it with the running man. Perfect.
Okay, cheers.
Okay, thank you for joining us tonight. Guys, thank you for joining along and for forcing me to do the running man. We'll be doing the Whisky Festival tomorrow from 2 till 5, so please jump in on that and we will see you then. So have a good night. Enjoy your whiskey. Slàinte mhath.
Slàinte.